Hello there and welcome back to my channel, and today I am going to be painting Chewbacca, who is also known as the walking carpet. So this is Chewbacca and he's a miniature from Star Wars Legion game, which is published by Fantasy Flight Games. I am having some trouble talking today, I'm sorry. So anyway, here is Chewbacca and he is all primed up in a nice grey primer. Now we're going to paint him in a nice beastie brown from Vallejo. So the trick with this is, with a nice even thin coat, we're just going to cover all of the fur. So we're going to cover all of the furry areas in this same beastie brown colour. Now beastie brown is quite cool, nice sort of brown colour. It's not too dark. It's almost got like a little bit of a, I don't know, like a little bit of a lighter sort of tone to it. So this is a good base colour for Chewbacca. You just want to cover all of the fur anyway, cover over the face and things like that, and we'll get to all of the details and bits a little bit later. Make sure that we're using a nice thin, even amount of paint. So once you thin your paints and you get those to move nicely across the miniature. And then we're just going to move across onto his satchel, where I'm sure he keeps all of his bolts for his bolt caster. And we're just going to paint this satchel a really nice dark brown. So if you've watched me paint leathers and things like that before, then this is normally the way that I do it. I will either use one of two different colours. So for this one I'm using the Vallejo, which is the dark rust. That's part of the Panzer Aces series colours. But if you're using a Citadel, which I often use quite a lot, I would use the Dryad Bark. And the reason why I use these colours is they're very dark colours to begin with, but they also they're perfect for other lighter browns to go on top. So when you put a lighter brown on top, you can also you can almost like paint and add your own folds and textures and things like that onto the miniature, because the dark underneath is so dark, it gives you that perfect tone, which I'll show you in a bit anyway. Now moving on to Chewbacca's bolt caster, you might be tempted to paint this black, and you can do. I mean, everything's up to personal choice. However you paint is completely up to you. Personally, I don't normally like to paint things direct shades, so I don't normally like to paint things exact true blacks and exact true whites and things like that, because you can lose a lot of detail. So for that I'm using a Vallejo German grey, which is a very sort of like subtle blue, very dark blue grey, so that we don't lose too much of the details and the tones. And once all of that is dry, that's our base coat done. So once we've got all of that dry, we're just going to go across and use the Army Painter Soft Tone. Soft Tone is one of my go-to washes. I find this wash to be very like almost, it's a little bit like magic really, because you paint this onto your miniatures, it sits in the recesses in a lovely way, and it doesn't darken the miniature down too much, so you don't lose that nice base coat, that nice base colour. You don't lose that into the wash and into the darkness then. So once you've done that, we're just going to go across and we're just going to dry brush that beastie brown back on. So we're just going to get the highlight back, the mid-tone back of the fur. So what we're doing is we're just dry brushing very lightly. Like I always say with dry brushing, less is more. So don't go too extreme with a big amount of paint on your brush. You're going to try and make sure that there's almost no paint on your brush, and then just build it up gently and build it up in stages. And the more you build up, you'll notice that the colour starts to come back. If you need to do this 2 or 3 times in the same area, then that's better than going too extreme in one go and then losing some of that detail. So take your time with the dry brushing, build it up in stages and in layers, and you'll get a much more even tone with dry brushing. Because the danger with dry brushing is you can either have too much paint on your brush, and then when you put it onto the miniature you don't actually dry brush, you just kind of lose the detail, or you could have no paint on your brush. So anyway, once we've done that back up with the beastie brown, what we're going to do is we're just going to use the Vallejo beige brown to dry brush, but we're just going to dry brush only the lower parts of the body. So we're just going to use this across from the knee down to the foot, and we're going to use this also across from the elbow to the wrist, to the hands, so we're just going to use it on the forearms and on the calves and the bottom part of the leg. We're also just going to put a little bit across the face and across a little bit at the top of his head as well, because when you paint in Chewbacca, or when you see photographs of Chewbacca, you'll notice Chewbacca isn't one colour. He's not just one tone brown and that's it. So what I'm trying to do here is simulate that he's got a few different colours and tones in his fur, so that should create a little bit more depth and a little bit more character in the miniature than just painting it one brown, one wash, and that's it. So you see, I'm just adding a little bit more of this highlight onto just a little bit of the edges of the fur. And as you see, I got a little picture just in the background that I'm using as reference. So what I'm trying to do here, because he's got two different tones of colour to his fur, now I've gone back and I'm using the Army Painter wash, but this time I'm using a dark tone. And what I'm going to do with this dark tone is I'm going to use this dark tone, but I'm going to avoid the areas that I've dry brushed with the beige brown. So I'm going to avoid going beyond the elbow, so the forearms are going to stay light. I'm also going to avoid going onto over the head too much, as you'll notice. So I'm just going to come across to the face here and try to leave a little bit of his face there. And same with the legs as well, which I'll show you in a sec. But what we're just going to do, we're just going to add a little bit just through Chewbacca's moustache and just put a little bit of darkness into his mouth there as well, just so that it creates a little bit of shade and a little bit of shadow in his mouth area there. So he's got a little bit of a darker moustache, just like so. And as I say, we're also going to do the same just across the body and the legs. So we're going to leave the legs from the knee down lighter, but I'm going to paint the wash just onto that area, as you'll see in a moment. And that's all you're doing is just following around the body and just trying to find where some areas will be dark, some areas will be light, and this is just kind of creating that multiple tone element to the character, so that you don't end up with him just being a flat brown, you see. With this dark tone, you can go back over the satchel as well, because that original dark colour that we used, that sort of that dark rust, that dryad bark colour on the satchel, when you put the dark tone on there, this will really separate the darker areas and the lighter areas as we paint those up. So don't be afraid to cover over the satchel with this colour as well. And as you see, as I was saying earlier, we're just going to come up to the knee, and we're just going to leave it at the knee, because we don't want him to be too one-dimensional. We want to give him a little bit more character and colour to him. There you go, just up the back. And as I said, you can go across the satchel, across the strap and things like that as well. That's absolutely fine. It'll all tie the colours together, it'll tie the miniature together, which is great. We're stopping off just at the knee. And there we go, so we're happy with that. As I say, just across the satchel as well, just to give that the areas where that satchel is folding across, just to give it a real nice, darker, deeper colour. And there you go. So what I'm just going to do quickly now, I'm using a one more layer of soft tone. And I'm using this from the knee down and on the forearms again, and the only reason I'm doing this is to just tie those colours together, because that dark tone, whereas the bottom part of the legs, bottom part of the arms look quite light, the dark tone then almost looks like it's just been left there. So I'm just going to cover this across so that it ties those two colours together, so that it kind of creates a nice mid-tone that we can cross over between the light and dark, just like so. I'm going to do the same, I think, just through the beard here, just again, just to tie that colour in. Yeah, just across there, and a little bit, again, just up and across the head. So just tying those shades in. But you can already see the difference between the body, the legs. You can see that there's a little bit of a two-tone going on, so that he's not just one flat colour, which is great. That's exactly what we want. So moving on to the satchel, what we're going to do is we're using a Vallejo flat brown for the satchel. And flat brown is almost a little bit of a slightly sort of reddy brown. So whereas we've been using browns that are obviously quite brown, this one being a little bit more reddy and a little bit more vibrant, this is going to make the satchel stand out across the rest of Chewbacca. The trouble with Chewbacca is because he's obviously a brown character, he's furry, he's brown, his bag is brown, his gun is black, you could get tied in or feel like you're just painting one tone. So using different color browns like this will allow you to separate that color, so it will allow you to give Chewbacca a little bit more character back. Just be careful when you're running the brush up and across the strap, because you'll notice with photos and things like that, if you're using reference photos, you'll notice that Chewbacca, the strap itself, contains loads and loads of small silver boxes, but then there's also straps going through the middle, so just be careful with that. Now once that flat brown is dry, you can then move on to use the Vallejo mahogany brown, and again this is a lighter tone of what we've just used, so we're just going to build up a little bit of character on the satchel here, and we're going to just use the tip of our paintbrush to catch on to the areas of the bag that would be the lightest. You'll notice that I've left a few little streaks and things like that on the bag where you can see my brush strokes, and that's great because with something that's leather and things, it's not going to be exactly perfect, so you kind of want a little bit of roughness on that kind of on that kind of texture, which will give it a bit more character and boost a little bit more of your sort of the way that he looks. Then he'll look really different and really individual for that. So I am going to use a direct black, but only for a single use, and that is probably the toughest part of this miniature, which is just painting his little nose. This is really fiddly, so take your time with this. Once you hit that little bit on the nose, it is very rewarding because it looks absolutely incredible. It just brings that little bit of the miniature together, because when you look at him later, you see his little nose and you've got that character in the face. It's great. And once you've done that, it's just going to fill on a little bit more of the details. So as I was saying, on these straps, you've got a lot of silver going across these. So I'm using a Vallejo gunmetal. You can use any metal you like as a mid-tone metal. So an Army Painter plate mail metal would be great, or a Citadel lead belcher would also be great. But for this, I'm using a Vallejo gunmetal. I'm just taking my time, as you see, just trying to hit those ridged areas that almost look a little bit like a spine. We're just going to try to catch those edges like so, but without painting the straps that we've already painted. It does take some practice, does take some time, so don't be too put off if you hit some of the straps. You can fix that up in your own time. Now what I'm also doing with the gunmetal is I'm using a very light dry brush onto that bulk caster. And the reason for this is I'm just trying to bring out some of those edges a little bit so that the bulk caster doesn't look too flat. But at the same time, it also looks worn. It looks like a weapon that has been used. It looks like something that has been through some stuff, you know. It's not a pristine brand new gun. This gun is Chewbacca's favourite. He's taken it everywhere with him, and so it will have a little bit of wear and tear. And for one of the final stages then, we're also looking at using a bone white from Vallejo. So again, you can use any kind of cream colour you like. Bone white is probably one of my go-to, my most favourite colours. We're just going to try to touch onto those teeth underneath in the bottom half of his jaw. It's very fiddly again, take your time. You'll notice that I put a little bit too much white in, a little bit too much cream. So what I've done is I've just dabbed a bit of water onto my brush, and I'm just using the tip of the brush to just pull the colour out of the mouth where and around the teeth where I think it's gone a bit too awry. So that is pretty much Chewbacca done. He's very simple, he's very easy, don't be too put off by him, but we can make him look more. So for me, with my Legion set, all of the bases are in snow. So this area and this step is purely optional. And what I've done is I've used part of the Army Painter snow basing effect, which when you mix with PVA glue creates snow on the base of the miniature. However, Chewbacca being a walking carpet, being a creature that is made entirely of fur, you know, he's covered from head to toe in fur. If it's snowing, snow is going to stick in the hair. So I'm going to try and add snow onto the miniature, into the hair, to create just a little bit more character, almost as if they are outside in the snow. Again, this is purely optional. You don't have to do this if you're afraid of ruining your miniature, if you're afraid of spending all that time getting it, you know, Chewbacca looking amazing, and then you don't want to put this on and wreck it. That's absolutely fine. You don't have to. This is just something that I've added on top just for a little bit of fun. What I'm doing is I'm just using a really old brush. It's a small brush, but the bristles have worn and warped and they're open. It's one of my basing brushes, and that's all I'm trying to do is just dab little bits of snow, and then I'm trying to manipulate those bits of snow just a little bit around the fur so it looks like the snow is sat in his fur, just like so. And I mean, there's no right or wrong with this. This is just dabbing little white bits of snow onto a furry creature. You know, there's no two ways about this. This is what it is. You can do it however you like. You can do it in a similar way to myself. You can go all out and cover him in snow. It is up to you. I just thought I'd try it because it's something unique to put on my channel, and it's something unique to do to my Legion set as well, being as they're all based with snow. So yeah, this is completely up to you. As I say, this is an entirely optional stage. What I'm trying to do is just trying to make a decision on where I think the snow would sit. So maybe across the top parts of the legs, across the shoulders, across the head, things like that. You can see that the snow in the base is going around his feet as well, where the snow is actually coming up into his fur around his feet and around his ankles, which is great, as this is tying him into the base as well, giving him a little bit more of a like I say, a little bit more character, a little bit more I don't want to say realism, but a little bit more to him. Substance. He's got a little bit more substance to him. So, once he's complete and you've got your snow, this is what I've got. Now, like I say, you don't have to add the snow. That was all purely optional. If you don't like the idea of the snow and you think it looks awful, that is completely up to you. Personally, I think he looked good. He ties in with my Legion set, and he ties in with my bases. So, I hope that you like this paint along, and thank you so much for watching.